Good morning, goedemorgen. It's my sixth host-operator keynote at this event, and my seventh keynote overall. Just quick show of hands, who actually attended the first one of these events back in 2012 in Darmstadt? Wow. Those were only a few hands, so my second question would have been who attended all events, but that would be even less. Great, but for all of you who did not join, this was actually the start of something very important in that industry. That was the launch of network function virtualization, the announcement that we had formed the ETSI industry specification group on network function virtualization. And from there on, the industry developed, I think, in a great way. However, the topic of my presentation today is accelerating the pace of innovation. Now, talking about acceleration in the Netherlands actually sounds a little bit strange for me, because when I took breakfast this morning with a view on the North Sea, the Netherlands are actually the country of deceleration for me. Take a quick vacation in between, or when I drive to the Netherlands, as I live only 280 kilometers away, actually crossing the border by car, it is time to decelerate, because otherwise you'll be a good customer of the Dutch collection office in Germany. I used to do that in the past, but speeding is actually quite expensive in the Netherlands. Now, still, I think there are sports areas where acceleration is properly understood. I was originally looking for a picture from the last Dutch Grand Prix, but that was in, I believe, 1985. Niki Lauda had won this one, but I didn't find a picture from this one, so I took a picture from Bahrain 2016, which actually shows the need for acceleration quite well, because here you see Bottas in the Williams crashing into Hamilton, and the one who was already far away was Rosberg, and he became the world champion in that year. So now, acceleration in Formula One, that seems to be a given. Acceleration within the telcos, well, I think we should, because we're not in a good situation in our industry. Traffic is still growing exponentially, and unfortunately, Moore's Law doesn't help us anymore to master the production cost challenge. In the past, with the densification of hardware, we could actually keep our production cost under control. But nowadays, Moore's Law is flattening out. So, at the same time, we're actually observing that our ARPU in most of the markets for traditional triple play services, if we're lucky, is flat. But in most markets, it's actually shrinking. So that's not a good situation to have. The production costs are increasing, and we're rolling out a new technology generation as 5G will start its way into the market with the first 5G new radio rollouts starting next year and into 2020. And we see a big paradigm shift, especially with 5G. We want to satisfy future customer demand, so we had indeed put a full bet when 5G was put together on the cloudification of network functions. Network slicing was a concept which was developed out of that idea in our minds that we would produce packet cores in cloud environments and could easily scale them to support more network slices. And yes, we see a densification of networks, but all of that means actually we have to do something, otherwise our production cost is just exploding. And obviously nobody can afford that. Now, I don't say here that the innovation we're getting from our traditional vendors is not sufficient. Just looking at Jan here in the first row as one example. We are receiving great innovation from our suppliers still, and especially in the 5G space, that is something which is remarkable. But I think overall, we're on a journey here. We're moving away from kind of the monolithic black boxes we had received from our vendors in the past, where we had a combination of hardware and software, to a fully disaggregated approach. And with a fully disaggregated approach, we have a separation of hardware and software. with some open interfaces and APIs in between. And that's a move, obviously, to a more modular and flexible kind of best-of-breed, best-in-class approach. Now, with that move to disaggregation actually comes something which I believe is truly challenging for us as telcos and for the industry overall. It's a change in the way we are working. I had highlighted that back in 2013 in my keynote at this event, and still it's something hitting the industry, I think, to a large point, because it's not so easy to actually take responsibility for the full lifecycle management. The ecosystem is changing. We're moving to the DevOps way of working, and it's a huge skill set transformation. It's also a cultural challenge for us as telcos, and it's very difficult actually to master this challenge alone. So we have to work together in this industry to master the challenge. And there are lots of organizations out there who are active in this space. So if your favorite organization is not up there, I apologize. I just included the organizations here where myself or my team or the teams of my peers are active in, and I sorted them timing-wise when the organization was founded. So Linux Foundation, well known for the development of Linux, but also hosting many other activities, was founded back in 2000. MEF, for me, one of the best examples for actually collaboration and not doing what you would normally do, just do things yourself, but collaborating with other organizations. MEF takes the ownership on specifications, APIs, and all the program around, but then the open source development is done in partnership with other organizations. The Open Networking Foundation, founded in 2011. We see the Open Compute Project, also founded in 2011. Then kind of a step forward, XRAN and the Telecom Infra Project were both announced beginning of 2016. I'm the chairman of the board of the Telecom Infra Project, so running one of those organizations or being responsible for one of those organizations, I can tell you it's sometimes challenging, because if you want to kind of step on the stage and show that you can provide value to the industry, you want to take that bold position and kind of grab land in some areas and show, hey, yes, we can do everything. Now, unfortunately, that's a non-scalable model. We as telcos have only an extremely limited amount of resources we can actually contribute into these open organizations. And the worst for me, now putting my DT hat back on, would be if there would be overlap between the organizations and if there would be a duplication of efforts. And that's what we, now putting the other hat on again, have to avoid as the leaders for these organizations. We have to avoid that overlap. So sometimes we just have to step back a little bit and think, where do we need to partner? And I think there's a great way forward here in the collaboration between these organizations. Again, MEF was a great example, doing that from the start when MEF moved into MEF 3.0. I think we're going to see something similar with ORAN also moving forward, and definitely on the open source software side, the Linux Foundation will play a main role. On the hardware side and system integration side, organizations like TIP and the Open Compute Project will continue to play an important role. Now, let's change our focus a little bit and, what a surprise, talk about network function virtualization, network function cloudification. And when I go back to 2012, the vision we had created that we would integrate clouds deep into our IP networks and use them to produce network functions. That would be a new carrier-grade service delivery. And the picture shown here shows the various approaches taken in the market to actually adopt NFV. So sometimes, even within a single organization, you find different strategies which are both shown here. On the far left side, that's what I would call the virtualized silo. So you get everything actually from one supplier, and it's more like the traditional way of buying a solution. There's full responsibility with the vendor, also for the system integration. While on the far right, that was the picture actually we had painted back in 2012, that the operator is taking way more responsibility and does both the horizontal as well as the vertical system integration. Now here comes the cultural challenge again, and the talent challenge we have in this industry. Because in order to do that, we need to have enough skilled people, and it's really hard work to actually get there. So while the open organizations are helping us in some way, there's still a major transformation all of us from the telco side need to drive within our organizations to actually allow us to work on the right side. Now, if for various reasons we can't do that, then it's not bad actually to take one of the options more to the left. And sometimes it makes sense if you want to act quickly and get into the market to take an option which is on the left side. So there's no good and bad on that chart, on that slide, but actually the idea we had back in 2012 was more on the right side. Now, 6 years have passed since 2012, and my original expectation was that we would be way ahead of where this industry is today with the deployment of virtualized network functions. But for some reason, it didn't happen. Well, having worked on the vendor side before, I can understand why it took a little bit longer, because nobody will just rewrite his packet core or IMS system and make it cloud native, just as the operators say, we are now believing in the cloud and everything will change. Well, it takes time until you're making such a commitment, and then typically you have to wait for an end-of-life cycle, and then indeed we see people investing into cloud-native software. That was something we had expected a bit earlier, because if you really think how to produce carrier-grade service out of a distributed data center environment, I think cloud-native applications also for the classical telco core applications is definitely helping. Now, well, I learned many years ago when I went through advanced presentation trainings at that time at Cisco, never use a religious picture in a with a multicultural audience. Nevertheless, we're in Europe. I'm using it anyhow. We're in the Netherlands. There's some beautiful museums here. That is a picture from Kranach, actually from a museum in Vienna, describing the paradise. And for many religions, paradise plays a role, so I apologize for taking kind of the Christian picture here. But here, that picture, for me, resonates well with the view of cloud native. Talking to a lot of people in the industry, everyone is describing cloud native as the paradise. So kind of here in the front of the picture, you see God explaining paradise to Adam and Eve and preparing them to use paradise in the proper way. Unfortunately, in the back of that picture, you see, well, something had happened. And for some reason, they lost paradise. And I want to avoid the same for the telco industry when we think about cloud native, because it's actually hard work. Yeah, so 6 years ago, in 2012, the vision was created at this event. Now we have 2018. We're still not there. So we learned, okay, the industry transformation is taking some time. Re-architecting applications is taking some time, but also preparing the infrastructure in a proper way is taking some time. I'm a little bit worried, and having some discussions yesterday with some of the original inventors of the NFV concept, I think there's a common view that not all of the challenges we have already identified for a cloud-native, microservice, kind of serverless world we're positioning for the future, that not all of those challenges are addressed. So again, there are a lot of organizations out there which are helpful, but I think overall, we need to think about how to really solve the orchestration and the automation challenge before going for a full cloud-native deployment. And as Michael was referring to the edge, I would expect indeed that the edge is a prime use case also for cloud-native services moving forward. And we see a big paradigm shift. But how to actually find the microservices, how to orchestrate the microservices, and how to operate them, these are topics we as an industry definitely need to work on now if we want to deploy in the 2020s. And we are not the hyperscales. So when you look at the way Google was pushing Kubernetes and developing Kubernetes, it's a slightly different use case they have. So applying that into our world requires some hard work. Sure, initiatives like ONAP on the orchestration side are helpful, but if you think about that massive edge case with microservices, well, that still requires a lot of work, and it maybe requires as well new technologies like AI being used in this context here for orchestration. Now, what sounds so simple, networking, it's actually one of the big challenge areas also in the heavy virtualization world we're operating in today. Network I/O optimization, it's something we maybe, also myself, being responsible for the infrastructure cloud at DT, we took a little bit too easy from the beginning because we said, okay, we built kind of we built everything in the same way. And we're just investing a little bit more CPU resources to deliver the performance applications need. But we learned, and Arash mentioned that a year ago in his keynote, that we actually need to talk to our customers, our internal customers, that's the application side of the house, and there shouldn't be a wall between ourselves and our customers. There should be collaboration, and take one area like SR-IOV, that is an area I wanted to avoid under all circumstances, but there are areas where you need to build based on SR-IOV to deliver the efficiency the application owners actually need for packet core services, for example. Now, it's still not 100% solved, I would say, in the heavy virtualization world, but I can tell you in the container-based world, networking is actually an even more drastic challenge. You have the same challenges plus a little bit on top of that. So it's definitely time for us as an industry to focus on that. Likewise, on the security side. On the security side, our paradigm is still more or less access control list based. So you know the layer 3 and layer 4 information of a flow, and that's what you use to adjust your security or control security. Well, if you spin up and spin down services on the fly, that model doesn't apply, and you need to change the security paradigm to actually manage this in the proper way. And that leads to a lot of the operational challenges as well. So this should not discourage anyone from moving cloud native, because I think it's the only way if we take what was announced here back in 2012 serious. We have to move to cloud native, otherwise we should have stayed in the old world. But still, we have to look at the challenges, and we have to work as a community, together with our vendors, together with open source organizations, with other open organizations, actually, on solving this challenge. Otherwise, our paradise indeed turns into hell, and definitely I would like to avoid that. So there will be lots of presentations during the event also on these topics, and I hope that by the end of the week, you feel, okay, it's truly paradise. With that, I'd like to close, and thank you.